Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In last week's lesson, we made a start of a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, narrated by Ibn Abbas anhu, which talked about a delegation, a waft in the name of Abdul Qais, who had come to Medina Munawwara to pose and ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam some questions. And I mentioned in last week's lesson that the reason why they came was that there was a particular group from Arabia or from the Arabs where they did not accept Islam, but also at the same time they weren't total deniers of Islam. But what they did was that they left their opinions about Islam suspended. They reserved their judgment about Islam in terms of, they said to themselves, if the Muslims, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if the Sahabas can defeat the Quraysh, can defeat the Arabs, the Mushriks, then fair enough, we will accept and believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be the true prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, if he can't, then that means that he's one of those who are not true prophets and true messengers of Allah. So it was after the conquest of Makkah, which happened in 8th Hijri, that's where we see many delegations, not just Wafd Abdul Qais, but many other delegations who would come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam questions about Imaan. And not only that these people, when they would accept Iman and they would become believers, their people also at the same time would also become believers as well. Now they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I mentioned last week's lesson that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam addresses them with the words marhaban bil qawm, which means welcome to such a group of people, nation, ghayra khazaya wala nadama, who weren't humiliated and nor was there any remorse. And last week's lesson I explained what we mean by humiliation and what we mean by remorse. Now they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that because we and a tribe called Mudar is between us and you, between where we live, Rabi'a, and also Medina Munawwara, there is a tribe called Mudar, and we and Mudar don't get along with each other. There's always like violent clashes between the two. And it's only during the 4 months when fighting is unlawful and haram, and the 4 months are Zulqa'dah, Zulhijjah, Muharram and Safar. So during these 4 months we are able to come and see you and meet you. And because we are unable to come every week or every month or every couple of months, it's going to be during those 8 months when we are allowed to come. But besides that, the other 4 months is very restricted, our movement. Can you give us some advice, or can you give us some things which we could obviously act upon ourselves, and then we could go back to our people and convey this message to them? And they also asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the hadith goes on to say, وَسَأَلُوهُ عَنِ الْأَشْرِبَةِ. They asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam some questions about certain drinks. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave them orders of 4 things. فَأَمَرَهُمْ بِأَرْبَعٍ وَنَهَاهُمْ عَنْ أَرْبَعٍ. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered them to do 4 things, and he prohibited them from doing 4 things. Now, what are the 4 things which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered? Number one was amarahum bil imani billahi wahdahu. So the first one was to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wahdahu only. But just to believe in one God. Tawheed. And again, what does Tawheed mean? Obviously we have looked at and have touched on over the past few weeks or so. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that, do you know what Iman is? So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained that Iman is to believe, shahadatu, to testify that there is no God besides Allah, wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah, and that Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Allah's messenger and is Allah's Rasul. And it also means wa iqam as-salah, to observe namaz. That was the second order Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave to them. Number 3, ita'uz zakah, and number 4 was siyamu Ramadan, to fast in the month of Ramadan. So these were the 4 things which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered this particular nation and this particular delegation to do. Number 1 was to believe in Allah. Number 2 was to iqam as-salah, to establish namaz, to establish salah. Now here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say ada'us salah, he didn't say just perform salah, but instead he used the word iqamus salah. Now what does iqam mean? Aqama yuqimu iqamata means to straighten it. So what's he trying to say here is that not just pray namaz or salah, whatever, however, namaz or to establish salah is to pray salah, making sure that you pray properly, making sure that when you are worshipping Allah, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarah, that you can see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in front of you. To pray with devotion, to pray with sincerity, with ikhlas. That's what we mean iqamus salah. Iqamus salah doesn't mean that 5 minutes before Maghrib you just quickly pray your Asr, or 5 minutes before Asr time starts pray your Dhuhr, or 5 minutes before sunrise you pray your Fajr. No, that is fair enough. That is ada'us salah. That is like performing salah. But the idea isn't just performing salah. The idea is getting the thawab and getting the reward. And that's why in another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, this is a hadith of Tirmidhi and Abu Dawood, that somebody who does a Quran khatam within 3 days, like less than 3 days, 1 day, 2 days, then the hadith goes on to say that he hasn't understood the Quran. Fair enough, he'll get the thawab of reading the Holy Quran, but if you do a Quran khatam within 1 night or 2 nights or 2 days, 10 paras a day, 15 paras a day, and you quickly do a Quran khatam within 2 days, the hadith says, man lam yatafaqqah, that person hasn't understood the Quran. So exactly here as well, when it comes to salah, the idea is to have that, taste the fruits from the salah. Not just performing it just for the sake of it. Similarly, when it comes to Quran, not just reading it for the sake of it, but reading the Quran, pondering over the Quran, trying to understand the Holy Quran. So exactly as well, that when we are praying salah, it's like a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to pray with devotion, to pray with sincerity. That is the meaning of iqamus salah. So that was the second thing which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered. The third thing was ita'uz zakat, to give zakat, to give 2.5% of your annual wealth, with obviously certain other conditions which obviously we're not going to go into now. And the fourth thing which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered was siyamu Ramadan, is to fast in the blessed month of Ramadan, which, as all of you know, is obligatory and first for every Muslim who is mature, who is of sane-minded. Then there was another extra order which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave, where he said to this tribe, to this delegation, that you should give min al-maghnami al-khumsa, that from all the booty which you gain, you have to give 1/5 of it to the Muslims, to the Baytul Mal, to the public treasury, i.e. to us, so that we can then distribute it amongst the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, amongst the needy, amongst the poor, amongst the miskeens, amongst the wayfarers. Now scholars have commentated here and they've said that There's so many other things which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have told them to do. He could have told them, go for Hajj once, or be kind to your parents, or like for example, learn about the Quran, or learn knowledge or acquire knowledge. Why did in particular Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say to them that make sure that you give 1/5 of your booty, your mali ghanimat, to the Muslims, to the poor, to the needy? Just for the younger members of the audience, I'll just explain what we mean by maghnam and the booty here. What happens is that whenever the Muslims, they conquer a particular land, or they are having war or battles with the non-believers, then so when they defeated them, so whatever which has a value, or something which is a commodity, items which is of value, it is all gathered. So it's not just about your gold and silver, it could be anything, it could be cattle, it could be land, it could even be food as well. So it's all gathered, and all the mujahideens, all those who participated in the battle, they will get 4/5 of it. So we distribute it, so we get all the pile of wealth and gold and silver and cattle and land, you name it, whatever was there, you get it all together. And then 4/5 of it, so 1/5, that will go to the Baytul Mal, to the public treasury, and the remaining 4/5, that is then distributed amongst the participators, the warriors who participated in the battle. And then it goes in the hadith that if say a particular mujahid or warrior came with a horse, then he will get 2 shares according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimullah, and if he just came by foot, he will just get 1 share. Sometimes it happens when when you go for, in some mosques, they give what we call a shinni. Obviously that's another issue whether it's allowed or not. Well, we don't give like little packets and so on. So that's what they do with the mali ghanima, the booty. They distribute in small kind of parts and shares. So any mujahid or any kind of warrior who came with a horse, he will get 2 shares. So he'll be able to take 2 shares of it. And if he just came by foot, he will only take 1 share. So that's how the booty would be distributed. So as I was explaining before, that why in particular did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mention this? So the reason why he mentioned it was because, as I was explaining, this tribe of Rabi'ah, who they were in combat with, they were in combat with a tribe called Budr for most of the year. 8 months of the year, they would be in combat with this tribe of Mudar. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam understood that because they were always fighting with Mudar, there would always be situations and occasions where they will be overtaking their land. They probably may get some booty in their possession. So therefore, that booty should then be distributed amongst themselves, obviously, but 1/5 of it should also be sent to the public treasury, which at that time would be in Medina Munawwara. So these were the five things altogether which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered. Now, very quickly, the last part of the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then prohibited this tribe or this delegation from 4 things, from 4 types of what we call drinks. Now, the same way certain food is halal in Islam, and certain foods and at'ima is haram in Islam, like pork, wild animals, you're not allowed to eat. Similarly, there are certain drinks which are lawful in Islam, and certain drinks are unlawful and haram in Islam. And the main drink which is haram in Islam, as you know, is khamr, is alcohol, intoxicants. And remember, when we talk about alcohol or khamr, we don't mean just like, a Carlsberg or Carling, whatever. We're not just talking about that, but we're just referring to anything which is blinding your insanity, or sanity, where your mind is slightly derailed. You can't differentiate between a man and a woman. You can't differentiate between right and wrong. So whether that is done through a glass of rum, or a glass of alcohol, or a glass of wine, or a glass of beer, or whether it's done through sniffing, whether it's done through taking weed, or taking speed, or cocaine, or whatever, the same rule also applies there as well, that is unlawful and haram. And another point to remember, obviously we'll touch on it some other time in a bit more detail, but another point to remember is that when it comes to alcohol, we don't look at the name, we don't look at the brand, we look at the ingredients. So there may be something which may have a halal sounding name, maybe called Red Bull, say for example, just say for argument's sake. But if he has alcohol inside, and that alcohol is not to like say preserve the freshness of it, but it's just, and it's noisy chemical alcohol, but it's real alcohol, then it will be unlawful and haram to consume. And there's also a hadith about that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that a time will come, this is one of the minor signs of Day of Judgment, that a time will come when alcohol will be drunk openly. But the way it will be drunk openly is that people will legalize alcohol by changing the name. So it'll be given a nice halal sounding name, but it has alcohol inside. Or it'll be given a nice halal sounding name, but it will have some weed or some kind of drugs inside. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that when that starts happening, then wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mass punishment. Wait for the earth to swallow these people up. Wait for them to be turned into monkeys and swine. Wait for them to be rained upon by stones and rocks and bricks from the earth and from the heavens. So this will happen when people start doing this. Now going back to the hadith, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is prohibiting them to make what we call in Arabic a drink, which is known in Arabic as nabiz. Nabiz is basically where you have water and you put dates inside and you let the date dissolve in that water, or honey inside water and you let that dissolve. You call that nabiz. So now they converted to Islam, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to them that, you know, when you make your halal drinks, even your halal lawful drinks, don't make it in these 4 utensils. And the 4 utensils are called hantam, dubba, nakir and musaffat. Okay, so these are like 4 specific type of utensils which the Arabs in those days would use to make alcohol inside. They would actually use it to make alcohol. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that, fair enough, you're not making alcohol in them, but don't make your nabiz or your halal drinks in them. Why? Because if you're going to start making halal drinks, then what could happen is that, you know, because we're talking about in those days where the plates, they weren't like steel, stainless steel, where when you wash it off, the haram things which were on it gets washed away. They were made out of, especially something like dubba, they were made out of pumpkins. They were made out of the barks of trees. So when they made alcohol in it before, so the nasha, the intoxication would still be stuck and kind of clogged inside the plate. So now when you're making halal drinks, so you're making halal or you're putting some nice, ribena, whatever inside, but then what's happening is that the haram intoxicant, which was clogged inside those wooden made plates, they will then come onto the halal drink, and then you'll be drinking it and you won't realize that you've actually drunk something which was haram and impermissible. So therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them that not to drink from these 4 types of plates. And then he goes on to say, ihfaduhunna wa akhbiru bihinna mawwara'akum, that what I just told you, the 4 things about Imaan, and also to give 1/5 of the beauty, and also at the same time you should remember it, ihfaduhunna, guard it, remember it, act upon it yourself. It's not just about we listen through one ear and then it comes out through the other. That's why in many places in the Holy Quran, in the hadiths where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about guarding the Quran, ta'ahadul Quran, aw kama qala salatu wasalam. It doesn't mean just guarding it, but when we talk about guarding it, it means, or protecting it, it means that you read it, but also act upon it as well. So similarly here, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told them that what I've given you, the advice I've given to you, it shouldn't be that you just remember it and that's it. But ihfaduhunna, remember it, act upon it. And not only that, wa akhbiru bihinna mawwara'akum, go and convey it to those of your people who couldn't come with you, who couldn't come with this delegation to me, go and convey it to them as well. So from this we can understand another very subtle point about the teaching of Islam is that it shouldn't just be for us that okay, we've come to this lecture or to this bayan and we just learnt it, that's it. But no, what we've learned, we should act upon it, but then we should go and tell our brothers at home, go and tell our sisters and our mothers at home that this is what we learned. And that's why when we look in the books of hadith, it's always, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ. It's always you learn, وَعَلَّمَ, and then you teach. It's about everything, about Quran, about hadith, about knowledge. It's always about أَوْ عَالِمٌ أَوْ مُتَعَلِّمٌ. Someone who's a scholar or knowledgeable person, or someone who is seeking to be a scholar or an alim. So what we can understand from here is that the two always goes hand in hand. It's not like you just know it yourself, but instead what you should do is that you should also propagate that, give da'wah. Go and tell others about this, go and try to teach others about it. This is all comes under this particular hadith where Prophet ﷺ said, ihfazuhunna, that protecting yourself, act upon it yourselves, but also more importantly, وَأَخْبِرُوا بِهِنَّ, go and convey it to others. May Allah give us the tawfiq to act on what has been said. وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ